Hello and welcome to another video from awhile. In this video we're going to show you how to add a road to your model railway, and it's quite a simple process. You're just going to need a few things. You're going to need a good pair of scissors. You're going to need some sort of glue. I'd recommend using some sort of prick stick type glue. Here we're using this American Elmer's glue, but it's basically the same stuff as prick stick, so it's not too bad. And you're also going to need a ruler to measure various sections of road, and you're also going to need some sort of road texture. So you can get different kind of kits that you can buy online. There's printable kits that turn out pretty well. I'm going to be using today the scalescenes.com printable kits. So these are ones I downloaded, and it's I'll show you here. It's Road and Pavements TO34, and this particular kit comes with about 14 pages or so of different things, including the actual kind of signage and stuff like that for the side of the roads. Probably the coolest thing it comes with though is it comes with a wide variety of plain tarmac sheets. I think it comes with about 3 of them, and you can of course print these off as many times as you want. It also has some pre-printed road markings that are fairly era non-specific, so you got stop there, give way on this end, and then they have slightly more modern kind of a bus stop here. I think it's in yellow. I think in the 1950s, a lot of those bus stops would have been in white, so that is probably a more modern thing. And I also have the no parking and taxi on the other side. It also comes with a couple other double yellow lines, pre-printed and so on. But for today's purpose, we're just going to use the plain tarmac sheets. Now, one of the things that's really important is to figure out how you want to set your layout, what kind of time and era. The road markings in the UK varied from era to era. So in the prior to the 1950s, 1960s, the roads had very few markings. In the 1950s, 1960s, you had a little bit more, I think, and then in the 1970s you started to see some of the more modern day markings, and then into the 80s and 90s obviously you have very complicated road marking systems. So for this particular layout that I'm working on, I wanted to be able to swap out not only the locomotive rolling stock but also the cars, so that I could change the era. So for me it presented a bit of a challenge, because if I go with a more modern kind of road marking system, I'd either have to film it without showing certain sections of the layout because it'd be the wrong era, or I'd have to be very careful about what kind of roads and so on I set up. So what I decided to do was to basically just aim for a 1950s style of road markings and go with a slightly smaller village sort of setup here, small town, small village kind of setup for this part of the layout. It allowed me to run more modern rolling stock with newer cars and make it kind of look more like a preserved line, or kind of a touristy area. Whereas if I wanted to run older rolling stock, like steam locomotives from the early BR steam or late BR steam, I would be able to get away with using older cars and removing the newer rolling stock from it. So this basically is the solution that I came up with. So one of the things we have here is we just have a junction, and so what we're going to do here is we have a give way section here, and we have a stop right here, and then we're just going to have this be just the kind of continuous road. So this particular road here would have the right of way as opposed to having to give way or to stop. And we're not really going to do much in the terms of road markings. We're going to actually just go with the plain unmarked section, and what we can do is we can paint the double yellow lines, or use kind of printouts of the double yellow lines for the side of the road when the pavements go in. And as a result, we're going to keep the roads a little wider than they need to be. So we're going to make the roads about 10 centimeters wide, so going to be a good bit wider than they need to be. And the reason for that is it allows us to put the pavements on one or both sides of the road, and we can just overlap the pavements so it looks a little more natural. So the only other thing I wanted to bring to your attention was the zebra crossing. So in England, the old style zebra crossings basically looked a bit like this, and they did not have the squiggly lines right before the zebra crossings. So someone may actually know what these things are called. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they may have a name. And so these things basically, in a more modern layout, would be positioned on either side of the zebra crossing. However, because we're going with an earlier kind of look, we're going to remove those, because I think those were actually added to the British road signage sometime in the 1970s or 1980s. So those would not be appropriate on an earlier kind of layout, so having them there would look out of place. So it is possible though to leave them out and have a more modern layout, because I think even today there may be still some places in the UK that don't have those, very rural places, but I still saw some photos where they were absent. So you can get away with it, or at least you can extend the kind of range of the ear for the layout. So it's actually quite simple. So what we're going to do first is measure and cut an appropriate piece for this section. So we're going to put the zebra crossing in about here. I'm not going to glue it on top of it because it just kind of overlaps and looks a bit silly. So I'm actually going to cut out another zebra crossing later on that's a little bit wider and leave it dropped in there. But for now I'm going to use it as a kind of guide so I know where to put this. So I'm going to cut this in place and drop it in there, and I'm going to do that for the whole section of road, and I'll show you how to glue it down, and we'll show you the end result. So if you give me a few minutes, we'll get this cut up, glued, and looking pretty good. So these particular sheets are actually 18.5 centimeters long. So if you wanted to save some of the sheets, you could actually set the side of the road to about 9.25 centimeters, and then you could actually just split down the center. However, I'm actually going to use the shorter side for a sidings project, so I can basically split up both. What I've also done here is I've actually drawn a 10 centimeter line on the baseboard, so that I don't have to keep remeasuring it. I can just line up the top of the page here and mark it here, and then once I've done that on both sides, I quite simply take the ruler like so, line it up with both ends, make sure your pencil is reasonably sharp, and then draw your line like so, and then you simply take the scissors and just cut on the across the line exactly, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to do this about 5 or 6 times so that we have enough for the whole length of the roadway here, and then I'll show you how to glue it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cut a various number of sheets here, and I've also gone and redone the zebra crossing, so it's a little bit longer on both sides. You can see this is the old one, and here's the old one in comparison. You can see I trimmed it a little close the first time around. Alright, so now just to glue it down, it's pretty simple. I'm going to line it up here at the edge of the baseboard, and we're just going to go and draw a quick line down through here so I know where to glue. This is actually the decking cover for the viaduct arches that go in here, so I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't accidentally glue it to the baseboard. And you can see now I've got a line to show me where I need to put the glue. So this is already glued to the baseboard, and it doesn't really matter if there's a gap here, because we're going to go and install these model railwayscenery.com pavements in and around the town area here, so we'll do that in a later video. So you're just going to get the Pritt stick, or in our case here Elmer's glue, which is the American version, and just run that as close as you can. And the nice thing with Elmer's glue is that it's purple, so it's very easy to see where you have put glue and where you have not. And just put some down like that, and the next thing you need to do is just line it up very carefully at the start, like so, and then just run your finger back and forth on it so there's no creases, and then usually kind of doing this sort of motion will make sure that there's no creases in it. What you don't want to have happen is have it crease or get all wrinkly, because then it just will look silly. And you can see there we did a pretty good job. Now if you're wondering why I'm using the Elmer's glue instead of something more like PVA type glue, that's if you use the PVA glue and you use just a small amount too much, you can end up ripping the paper. So it's just a little bit easier and a little bit safer to use this. And then what I normally do is when I put the pavements down along the side of it here, I'll use some PVA glue, and that will kind of just glue it down a little bit better. And we're just going to use the same technique then for the road itself. So you want to make sure the road is somewhat level and straight with this, and like I said, there's not a real big problem if it ends up being a little bit overlapped. And you know, on the side of the road we're going to go and put a wall, so or maybe some pavement slabs, so it doesn't matter if this is uneven. You can always add more, or work around it, so it's not a big deal. Remember, we made this a good bit bigger than we needed it to be because we're going to do the overlapping pavement. So I've got this now in place, so I'm going to do the same technique, just take the pencil and kind of mark it. In this case I'm just going to mark the corners because it's a longer piece, and it's the same deal. So I'm going to go and glue this down, and I'll keep on going until I get to the end of the road, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, so here you have it. It's the end result. You can see I also put in the tarmac here for the junction. There's a little bit of baseboard still exposed here, and this will get covered up by the pavements. I'm going to use the same pavements that I did on the other side, which is the railwayscenery.com pavements. So we'll get those in here in a later video. You can see here there's a little bit of a line where there's a tiny height difference in the baseboard. One thing I could have done is put some card in and sloped it up to try to hide that. And another thing you can do is just drop some weathering powders in here and blend the two, and it'll basically get rid of that line. So I'll probably go with the weathering powders route. That's basically it. So I'll do a quick shot from the other direction so you can check it out, and hope you enjoyed this video.